Alrighty, what do we got going on today? Yeah. Hey everybody, Steve here from The Varied Life. California's burning. Yeah, if you've been living under a rock, you haven't heard that California is burning out of control. We're looking at Palisades, and it's just getting ugly. And so we're going to go over some information here. Yeah, absolutely crazy stuff on what's going on with California. And like I said, it's gotten pretty bad. A little bit of background. I actually lived in California for some time, have grandparents there, or I should say I had grandparents there. And then, let's see what else. I still have some family there, lived there during the summers in the San Bernardino area and things like that. Spent time with grandparents who moved from Colorado to California. And back when California was a bastion of common sense and greatness, California was really the place to be. And it was safe, it was great, sun, fun, the whole nine yards. People were allowed to do their jobs, such as fire departments, and we'll get into that a little bit. What makes me qualified to talk on this? Some of that. But also the fact that my stepdad was a firefighter. He was actually a smoke jumper, which is kind of like a wilderness firefighter. So when you have a forest ranger and you have forest fires, and then they send out the smoke jumpers, they go up in planes and parachute behind the lines of the fire or in the direct path of the fire to dig fire lines and fight fires out in wilderness areas. That's what he ended up doing. And so during the time growing up, I heard lots of stories of him being a smoke jumper, and he did work in California, Oregon, and a couple of other states. So yeah, it was really, really interesting. But one of those things was controlled burns. And for those of you who don't know, and I think a lot of people in California don't know, at least the leaders don't understand, even the fire chiefs and the people who do the funding, don't understand that when you have a forest or you have wild areas of land where you have, I don't know, plants and things that grow and then die, and those things that die dry up and they leave tinder, brush, all kinds of dried grasses and so on and so forth, that ends up at a spark just spontaneously combust, and combine that with some hot weather and some winds, and you have a raging forest fire. And that's what we're seeing in California. And unfortunately, what they did not do was vegetation control, and what they did not do was control burns like they used to do way back in the day. Like I said, I remember living in California. It was a long time ago, and matter of fact, just to give a little bit of insight, I remember living with my grandparents in California, and one of my uncles worked at Universal Studios, and we were actually brought into Universal Studios, not on the tour, but he brought us on, and we got to see one of the sets, and when they were filming Planet of the Apes, or one of the Planet of the Apes series. So I actually got to meet people that were, when I was a little kid, in makeup. They were doing it, all quiet on set, and they'd film, and then we meet some of the actors, so it was really neat. I met Telly Savalas. He wasn't in Planet of the Apes. Let's see, a couple other actors that I met. And so it's just really kind of interesting. But with that, when you have brush that grows and you don't control it, you don't remove it, you don't do controlled burns to get rid of that brush and dry tinder just stacks up, and it ends up that it's dry, it's light, and as soon as it sets fire and the winds come into play, it kind of blows everything, and it just advances the fire in just ways that you can't imagine. That's just unfortunately a thing that we see. And what to combat against that, what you end up doing is you have funding for firefighters to hire personnel, hire good personnel that can do their jobs, to get good training, do these controlled burns, to keep the fire mitigation down, and to minimize the loss of life or structural damage from forest fires, because you're minimizing the tinderbox in which this whole thing stems from. It takes a lot of money, and it's kind of like it's a concurrent thing. It's kind of like concurrent to where it's something that you have to do each and every year, and the larger it's almost like you let the cat out of the bag. You open Pandora's boxes when you remove the funding to do that, or you minimize the amount of controlled burns that you can do. And what happens is you get so far behind that if you reduce personnel and you reduce funding and you reduce those procedures for those controlled burns, you're never going to get that back in the box. And unfortunately, what happened is what we're seeing here in California, or me not being in California, I'm in Korea, but that's what we're seeing in California is these fires that are raging out of control, destroying tens of thousands of homes and businesses, loss of life, people's lives, their entire, everything that they've ever worked for has gone up, in a puff of smoke, and it's still raging. And the duty of the people like the mayors, the fire chiefs, and all the leaders in charge thought it would be better than hiring good personnel, doing training, doing controlled burns, allocating enough water resources for California, because Lord knows, California doesn't have a lot of resources for water. But Governor Newsom, what he ended up doing is saying, no, we can't do this. And there's something he's trying to protect the smelt fish, and so that kept them from using or having access to water resources. And so that's why a number of fire hydrants were left dry. And again, it's just this chain reaction thing of now they have a raging forest fires. Well, you can't go back in time and say, well, we got to reverse what we did. We don't care about the smelt fish anymore. We need water. We don't have time machines. We can't do that. So you're left with the results of, consequences for your actions or lack of actions. And unfortunately, it is ended up being really bad. Again, like I said, my stepdad was a firefighter and a smoke jumper, forest ranger. He had a degree in that. And so, he's a pretty smart guy in that aspect. Anyway, it ends up that the mayors and the fire chiefs and the city leaders are kind of on the left. I'm an independent, so I'm in the middle, and so I like good ideas from both sides, as long as there's good ideas and they're common sense. With that being said, the fire chiefs and all this, they thought, you know what, we need to spend money instead of allocating enough resources like water, instead of implementing and continuing the procedures for controlled burns to minimize the damage that wildfires can have on the state. What they ended up doing is they cut the budget of all the fire departments, and they diverted those funds to areas like LGBTQ plus, diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically hiring people, which included the lowering of standards for those DEI people to get into firefighting, which results in a low quality firefighter type of person. And yeah, it's just not going well. You're removing money and funding from fire departments, so that means they can't, maintain the equipment that they have like they used to in the past, and it's just getting really bad. What we found out from the news so far is that within the last few months, they diverted over $17 million from the fire departments in California, and to go to these different programs. The LGBTQ, which if you want to do that, if that's what you do and that's what you are, then that's absolutely fine. No skin off of my nose. But I find it a real disservice to take the funds from firefighters that could have saved thousands and thousands of homes and Lord knows how many people who have died from this, kept them from dying because you wanted to promote an alternative lifestyle with firefighting funds. That doesn't make sense. If the state wants to do that, then have a tax or pull money from somewhere else. You don't pull it away from services that can protect the lives of people and property and businesses and so on and so forth. The more they dig into this, you're going to find it's going to be far more than $17 million. There's been a pattern of abuse over the fire departments across the state of California. Is just going to be unbelievable. And when they dig into this, they're just going to find out there's so misappropriation of funds, it's not even funny. I remember the time when I remember reading about fire departments in California. The whole big thing was, we need to put LGBTQ rainbow flags on all our fire trucks. Well, how much does that cost? And then the training associated with LGBTQ and DEI and all this stuff, mandatory training, when it really should have been training for, I don't know, maybe fighting fires. Being a firefighter is a pretty important job. There's a fire, you put water on it. There's certain ways to do it and considerations and procedures and policies that you have to follow to fight fires. And it's pretty cut and dried. Unfortunately, it's so dry now that it burst into flames and it's not getting the result that they wanted. We have understaffed fire departments. We have equipment that is not working and not up to par. And then we have firefighters that just can't do the job like the old firefighters used to do because they lowered the standards to be diverse and equitable and inclusive to everybody, unfortunately. Some of the diverted funds for non-firefighting programs that they took from the fire departments, for example, over $14,000 went to the Gay Men's Choir of Los Angeles to create a musical experiences that strengthens our role as a leader among lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and the performing arts organizations. Can this choir sing the fire down? Does their singing stop the spreading of fire and the destruction of property and businesses and save the lives of people during a fire? Yeah, I didn't think so. Another $190,000 was allocated to the Homeless and HIV Program, which includes their infamous syringe exchange. And we've seen videos on that in California and many places where people have gone up and they go to these treatment centers because they want to give supplies to addicts, drug addicts, and give them needles, syringes, all kinds of things, tons of stuff made out of plastic. But you can't have a plastic straw, but then you'll see, syringes littered everywhere in California. I mean, it's just amazing the amount of plastic that they're using and they're giving away to drug addicts, which as soon as that was enacted, you had tons of people leaving other states and going to California. So the homeless problem rises even more. And so, yeah, you can't use plastic drinking straws, but, for every one drinking straw that you took off of the table, you're putting like 100 plastic syringes and needles onto the streets, which don't get disposed of in a proper manner. Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. We continue on and it talks about how, seriously, $100,000 for funds put aside to pay for the Juneteenth celebration. I'm all for celebrating and, celebrating and freedoms and so on and so forth and holidays and getting time off. I'm all for that. But when you take money, $100,000 that should have been for firefighters into stopping and fires, I don't know. It's what did you really get out of that? If people want to celebrate, let them celebrate the holidays on their own. You don't need to take $100,000 out of the fire department and redirect that towards, seriously. $13,000 was allocated to the LGBTQ Heritage Month programs. So again, another great shuffling of the shells over to something that is absolutely useless in regards to what became a perfect storm of this. Then there was the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department was also granted $100,000 for a midnight stroll transgender cafe to fund housing for homeless transgender individuals in Hollywood. So you housed them, you took the money away from the fire department, you housed these people, and now because you took all that money, their house has been burned down. So now they're twice homeless. Congratulations, you're monumentally stupid on 2 levels and a lot more. The county also granted $13,000 to the LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Heritage Month programs and $4.5 million to the infrastructure of electric vehicle chargers. Appropriations for the general city purposes saw $250,000 set aside for equity and inclusion. First of all, the electrical grid in California can't even handle normal pre-electric vehicle usage. You would have rolling brownouts during the summers. I remember I remember it vividly, where power would go out because there's too much draw. There hasn't been an upgrade on the infrastructure and the electrical system in California to meet the need of all these electrical vehicles. So again, yeah, it doesn't really, and oh yeah, by the way, saying that everybody's going to go green, the majority of electricity is generated by fossil fuels, which aren't really fossil fuels. Yeah, it's not Dino the dinosaur and dying and being compressed under rock that creates oil. It's a renewable thing. It's byproduct of the earth. It's always there. Vegetation. It's not a fossil fuel as we've been led to believe, and I've been saying that for decades. $250,000 for equity and inclusion. They included just some kind of, we all need to be equal and equity and be included, and we need to represent everybody. But you know what? Wildfires don't care if you have equity or you've been included in the mix and being properly represented because of your sex, your race, or whatever else that you claim to be. So instead of funding the fire departments for personnel, for training, for procedures, controlled burns, and then throw in the mix that, no, we're going to cut back on the water because we want to protect the smelt fish, that just compounds the problem even more. There were fire hydrants that are being reported as not having water. And so thousands of properties have perished and businesses have burned to the ground. And some people have died and injured, and people lost their entire life and everything that culminated their lives. They've lost absolutely everything. People barely escaped with their lives. So this is so far that's about 10,000 homes plus and businesses being destroyed, and this is just the beginning. Because you think that the Palisades fire is it's like 8 times bigger than the Great Chicago Fire of long time ago. But nobody teaches history anymore, so probably people don't even know, what the Great Chicago Fire was. But it's like 8 times larger than the Great Chicago Fire, and we're not done yet. California isn't done yet, because now there's reports in Hollywood and other places that fires are starting up, and we're getting the same result. You took away money from life-saving services and important services like the fire departments and police and so on and so forth, and now you have to lie in the bed that you made, and it's burning. The bed is burning. So let's continue on. I mean, imagine you're a business owner. Imagine you're a small business owner, or even if you own a franchise or things like that, property owner, you're a homeowner, whatever. Now we're getting reports that insurance companies have canceled fire insurance policies and or have not allowed people to get fire insurance policies because they're in California. Why would insurance companies cancel or not allow fire insurance? Maybe it's because they diverted funds from the fire departments, they limited the amount of water, they cut back on training, equipment, and maintenance of the fire department personnel and all of that. What are the odds? Insurance companies are based on risk and probability. The other interesting thing to note, excuse me, is that my stepdad, after he did the smoke jumper forest ranger thing, he was in the U.S. Army, he was a Vietnam veteran, and he was a captain. He was a helicopter pilot flying Hueys, and there was a couple other aircraft that he flew. But he ended up having over 5,000 flight hours. Then he came out and got out after Vietnam, and he went into insurance. He went into real estate, and then he went into insurance. And so everything from car insurance, the regular normal insurance stuff they do, and also insurance policies for businesses and industrial and so on and so forth. So I got to hear a lot about that. And even though it wasn't really pertinent to me in my teenage years, a lot of that stuff stuck with me, and found out that when there reaches a high enough level of risk, the insurance companies do the math. And they project and they say, well, we're taking in this much money from the premiums that come in for the policies. And if there is a natural disaster or a nationwide disaster or whatever it is, maybe it's snowstorms, maybe it's hailstorms or so ever, they've already projected out and done the math to the nth degree, to the point of where they're saying, okay, we got to raise rates, or the risk is so high that we would lose our shorts that we're no longer going to grant policies for certain people or demographics in certain areas. And that's exactly what we're seeing in California, where the prices for insurance policies has gone up exponentially. And now we're hearing the stories of people that were not granted or could not buy fire insurance. And so it's like, well, hey, whatever. On multi-million-dollar properties that are mortgaged up to the hilt, the people can't afford to pay. And so who's going to be left with the bill? There's going to be a lot of foreclosures. This is going to be huge. This is definitely going to be huge because it's going to get even worse, because the aftermath of this, insurance companies and businesses are going to pull back even more, because once you touch that hot stove and it burns you once, twice, three times, then they're like, oh, okay, now we're out of here. But insurance companies are very adept into analyzing risk and hedging their bets, because they are a for-profit entity. They are a business. And so when you have insurance companies that are saying, yeah, we're no longer writing policies, you're in a world of hurt. So this means that a lot of people are going to be filing foreclosures, bankruptcy, so on and so forth. And how much money do you have? The majority of people are like $38,000 in debt or something like that, and it's grown exponentially. People don't have money saved up to move. And so now you're going to have a bunch of homeless people that now they have to wait for checks from the government and or insurance companies, or maybe not insurance because they don't have insurance for this, the fire, because, they didn't allow that into their policies. And we're going to see a lot of people that are going to wake up and say, hey, well, I got insurance. But then there's going to be the small print in the policy that says, well, if blah, blah, blah happens, we don't have to pay. That's going to show and rear its ugly head. So, we're going to see a lot of homeless people, way more than what we had in California. It's going to go up. But now, where are these people going to go? That's going to be really interesting. When you have businesses, when you have people that have lost their homes, where businesses aren't going to rebuild when they see that the price of insurance for insuring their properties and their business and all of this stuff, especially fire insurance, they're not going to restart their business in California, in those places, because of the increased risk. So this is going to get even worse. And I expect the economy, California has a terrible economy, by the way. Back when I was a kid, it had a really good economy. Of course, then it had more of a conservative leadership back then. Then it became Democrat, then it became liberal, and then it became this extreme left-leaning type of government that it is. And let's save the smelt fish, and who cares about the tens of thousands of properties and houses and businesses that have been destroyed? Let's feel good in our heart that we lost everything, but the smelt fish are still there. Just it's a tear-jerking moment, and it just fills me with, I have a stupid allergy. So California is, there's a plague in California, and it is stupidity. And unfortunately, we're getting people that are being put in charge, and they're pushing narratives and agendas that don't have anything to do with the things that they're in charge of. So, for example, diverting funds from fire departments or police departments, essential and emergency services, into DEI and whatever else. It doesn't matter if it's LGBTQ or, it could be for poetry reading or whatever else. Those funds were diverted. And whenever it's diverted to, those things don't do us any good in the light of the disaster that we're facing in California right now. So, with that said, it's going to get pretty interesting in where the next thing that I see in California is there's going to be a property crash, because prices of property has gone up just through the roof. And when you have property that's like a one-bedroom studio apartment that's like $900,000, or a house that's a two-bedroom, one-bath, no garage, and it's over $1 million, couple $1 million. Yeah, those that's all going to crash. So if it was me, and if I still had a property, and I had, of course, I would be paying off my property. I would sell it, get the money, and run, and go to some place that is a more independent and common sense type of state, something that doesn't divert funds, services, training, equipment, and so on and so forth from essential services and emergency services to things that don't make a hill of beans when compared to those emergency services. Yeah, it's just absolutely insane. So anyway, yeah. With that, I'm glad to be in Korea. I am a retired veteran and decided to sell everything and retire overseas because the American dollar goes further here than where we were living in southern Colorado, which is kind of a mini California. It kind of ends up that whatever happens in California, Colorado is soon to follow. And I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say we're probably going to see more of this, where unless leaders in Colorado don't take money and don't divert funds that should be for emergency services, we're going to see a repeat of the same thing in Colorado with Colorado forest fires. It gets even worse because it's not even a natural disaster. Now we're getting reports out of California that arson is involved and people are starting fires. Excuse me. So, yeah. And we also saw that in Colorado before we left. We had a series of fires where fires were started alongside the roads, and all of a sudden they just kind of blew up in thousands and thousands of acres. Thankfully, the parts of Colorado, there's more trees than people. Not like California, but still that devastation can still hit Colorado. And as Colorado gets bigger and bigger and more populous, especially in cities around Denver and all of those big, huge metropolitan areas, excuse me, we're going to see more of that. And we're really going to see how the defunding of police, because now we're not even dipping into the crime that happens during natural disasters. The stealing, the theft, the looting, the so on and so forth, the robberies, with limited resources and the defunding of police. What you're finding out is that during natural or man-made disasters, the state cannot respond to protect people and its property. And that is a bad recipe for good living. I'm just saying, just kind of go out on a limb. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm have too much common sense. Maybe I'm too much in the middle, and it just doesn't make any sense. So hopefully the people will wake up that are in California and Colorado, and these people will leave. And of course, I think some of the top states in which people are leaving, I read an article that was talking about that. What states are the top 10 states where people are leaving, and then the top 10 states where people are going. They're leaving California and they're going to Florida. They're leaving from New York and they're going to Texas. And it's kind of that whole thing. You got a liberal state that has been under liberal control for decades, and it's crumbling and falling apart. And these people are getting fed up with it. So they move to a state that has its collective shit together. So it is what it is. But being here in Korea, I like the fact that it's more conservative over here. There's more common sense. There's still problems. There's problems in every single government. But as a U.S. citizen who lives over here, I enjoy the low crime. I enjoy being able to save money in retirement. I'm spending half of what we would pay in the United States in southern Colorado. And you definitely don't see the stupidity of what we see in California and Colorado. So, yeah, I thought I'd just talk about some of these things. And to remind people, even though I'm retired, I'm an expat overseas here in Korea, and I'll probably never go back to the United States if it's up to me. But, excuse me, I would still vote. And I still vote for common sense. So, yeah, I am very active in elections and writing congressmen and senators and elected officials and so on and so forth. I'm still all over that, even though I'm living here in Korea. Because I believe in my country. I believe in the United States and all of those things. But unfortunately, There's a lot of corruption in the United States, and that's what we end up seeing is just a ton of corruption and mismanagement of funds. And unfortunately, politicians have hoodwinked citizens and civilians, their citizens, to vote for me because of ABC, whatever it is. It could be race, it could be gender, it could be religion, it could be lack of religion, whatever it is. But they're getting people to vote for them on anything but the important issues. And, they like the buzzwords. Oh, we want DEI, and oh, we want, equity and inclusion. Oh, we want this and we want that. And people seem to forget. And the reason they forget is because they haven't been taught in schools social studies, civics, so on and so forth. What actually makes a society run, and what are the important things for a society, life-giving and life-saving services, fire departments, police, so on and so forth, as part of the cornerstones of having a great society. When you break down those essential pillars to keep people alive and healthy and happy and, pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you take away some of those pillars, what's going to be replaced? It's going to go to something that doesn't mean a hill of beans. And so when you take from one area and put it into something else, there's always going to be a void left, and that void is going to be disastrous, as we've seen in California. So I expect that to happen in Colorado as well. Unless things change, it's just going to get worse. I think property prices are going to take a dive in California because eventually people, insurance companies and all that, they're going to realize, and they're going to say, hey, we're just not going to insure. We're not going to insure properties in California anymore. And those companies that do will charge such huge and exorbitant prices that people are going to be like, shit, I can barely afford to live here. And now the insurance costs are going to make it unaffordable. And so they're going to leave. But I think the number one state in which people are leaving is California to go to other states, more conservative oriented states where they don't defund their police, where they don't defund their fire departments and emergency services and so on and so forth. So California is begging and pleading every time they get forest fires. Oh, we need people to come from other states and help us fight these fires. Instead of, well, you just gave away $17 million. You could have been, and Lord knows how many more hundreds of millions that they have wasted by not properly funding their fire departments in California. They could have built up and had enough planes, enough trucks, and enough people and training and so on and so forth. But no, we don't want to do that. Now we're going to beg and plead, and it's like, of course, we should help them. But the fact is, we see this pattern of mismanagement and abuse to the point of where it's like, yeah, you need to get your shit together. You really need to get your shit together. And all this mismanagement, it's not the politicians who feel the brunt of it. It's the everyday people. The everyday people like you and me that work and, we're trying to make ends meet. We're trying to get to retirement and leave something for our kids. And we're being priced out of the market. And then we have a natural disaster. We're not going to have any recourse whatsoever because we don't have insurance. Or there's a certain little, read the small print of, well, if the city defunds, this, and this, we're not responsible because it's now the city or the state is responsible because they took away from the funding, which would be normal firefighting response. So under that clause in their policy, I bet you that's what we're going to see. I bet you that's what we're going to see. So the insurance companies are going to put this onto the state. People are going to sue the state of California. Matter of fact, I just read an article where people are thinking about doing that, the mayor and so on and so forth. And it's just going to get bad. It's going to get bad. And for people that did have insurance, if I lost everything in a fire, I would move to some other state. I would move, as a general rule, I would leave any liberal state and I would go to a more conservative state. That would be my advice. Now, like I said, I'm an independent. I've had people, oh, this and that, and oh, you're right wing. No, I'm in the middle. Excuse me. I'm in the middle, and I think that we need to have programs for people that are down on their luck, but I also believe in fiscal responsibility and good common sense ideas and good ideas from both sides. But when you start doing what is obscenely stupid, monumentally stupid, and you can't see that this is going to result in disaster, yeah, there's no hope for the state of California. We see things like Canada where Justin Trudeau is stepping and he's resigning. Look into that and why he's resigning. Yeah, the hammer's about to fall. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, the politicians, isn't it amazing how they get millions and millions of dollars off of the meager paychecks of them being a politician? And then all of a sudden we find out, corruption and business deals and this and that and stock manipulation and tit for tat and, what are the odds? That somebody who has a public servant, elected official that only had, $50,000, $100,000 in all of their assets combined, that when they become a mayor or something like that, then all of a sudden now they have multi-million dollars of assets and money and all this stuff off a paycheck that is like this. It doesn't make sense. Kickbacks and so on and so forth, and bribes, consulting fees, just tons of stuff. It's just absolutely insane. But every country has corruption. Every country has its own problems. But I'm telling you, if you live in California, like Los Angeles and some of the highly centralized cities in California, huge populations and you don't have to look far. You just look at the ones that have DEI or LGBTQ and have their budget slashed. And it's more important that we put a rainbow flag on a fire truck than hiring actual firemen or women to do the job and getting more trucks, getting more airplanes to get water and put on fires. No, let's not spend money on that. Let's spend it on all these other things and agendas. Does that mean I'm against LGBTQ? No, it's not. You can do whatever you want in the privacy of your own home. That's on you. I do whatever I do in the privacy of my own home. I don't hold it against anybody. And if you do, that's wrong, and it could be punishable, by some prison time in some states if you do it unwantingly. But with that being said, anything that diverts, it's not all of these things that I'm like, this is bad, this is bad, and this is bad, and that's the only bad thing there is. If these funds were diverted for some other thing other than, literacy program, we're going to take $17 million and create a literacy program and take it away from the fire department, we still get the same result. So that it's still stupid, okay? Stupid is as stupid does. So it doesn't matter where the money went. The fact is that the money was taken and defunded from essential services. And that's monumentally stupid. So anyway, that's what we got going on. I wanted to, kind of do a little video on that and see what's going on. Again, just amazing on what is going on in California, and it's not done. Like I said, I read some articles and seen some videos, and with overseas news sources showing how in Hollywood they're seeing fires. There's other fires that have supposedly been started, so there's multiple arson possibilities and raging fires, and it's just not going to stop. So yeah, this whole Palisades fire thing is not the end. It will continue on. So yeah, it's what do you do? What do you do? I don't know. That's why I left. That's one of the things you could do. Go to a place that has common sense. So anyway, what are your thoughts? I'm going to ask you some questions. What are your thoughts on insurance companies canceling or not issuing any more fire insurance policies in California? Do you think that's good? It's bad? Are they justified in doing so? After all, insurance is a business, and they're not going to, go into something where they're knowingly going to lose money and collapse their business. So which side are you on? Or do you think that the city government is more at fault for this? And should there be lawsuits against the city and the mayors and departments and so on and so forth for the misallocation of funds and budgets into things that obviously don't help in fighting fires? I don't know. we'll see. Put that in the comment section down below. I'd really like to see that. And on an administrative note, if you want to buy me a coffee, you can click the link in the description box down below. Would appreciate that. There's a number of people who have given me coffees or bought me coffees. We've got these people here, and I just had a number of people add and buy me more coffees, so I need to update that graphic, so I apologize, but I have much respect for them. On a lighter note, not so much of a burning question, pun intended, see what you can do to donate for relief agencies in California, because a lot of people are affected. They've lost absolutely everything. They have nothing. And, find a good charity to donate to actually get the most amount of money into the hands of these people that actually need it. Because these people, it's not their fault that the leaders did something stupid. Yeah, maybe some of them voted for these stupid leaders, but, a lot of people didn't. But that remains, these people still need help, so thoughts and prayers go out to those people as well. You can do all the thoughts and prayers you want, but until you actually reach out and help people with something tangible, thoughts and prayers don't really do as much. What's really appreciated is finding a good charity and donating to help these people. And you have to do your own due diligence. I'm not going to try to swing you into one way or another. You got to do your own and do that. So with that, that's going to be it. Crazy times we're living in. Oh, and then what else is on the horizon? The new HMPV virus that is gaining more traction than COVID, but thankfully it's not as deadly as COVID. That is popping up in all over, so we'll see how that goes. So, cough into your armpit, cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze, and wash your hands and face and all your other nasty parts, and stay clean and be healthy, okay? We'll see you on the next video. Peace. Oh, yeah, don't forget, subscribe and like. I'd appreciate that as well. All right, we'll see you.